Okay, let's get a business update. First, the US dollar has climbed higher on the first trading day of the year as investors await a US jobs report that's coming on Friday. The dollar index, measured against 6 rival currencies, fell 2% last year but gained almost 0.16% as investors await possible US Fed rate cuts this year. The ascent weighed on the Japanese yen the most, with the Asian currency down 0.54% despite having slid 7% last year. Staying in Asia, Korea's Kospi stock index has reached its highest closing level since June 22, climbing 0.6%. The biggest drivers of the gain, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, both semiconductor stocks. The rally comes as the Korean government banned short selling in local equities in early November. Let's get more on this now from Han Tan, who's in Dubai, joins me on the line. Welcome, Chief Market Analyst for Xfinity Group. Just explain for me first the scenarios in the jobs data that will influence the Fed's decision at the next meeting.
Yeah, so first things first, we are focusing less on the headline number, as in how many jobs were either added or are not added, but we're looking more so for wage growth, right? Because if we look at the headline number, whether it's slower than expected hiring or better than expected hiring, either way, markets could interpret it as good news as the Fed seeks to achieve a soft landing for the US economy. But it's the wage growth that I think the Fed and markets will be looking at, because if we see perhaps higher than expected wage growth, that may feed into perhaps a resurgence in inflation, and that could force the Fed to potentially keep rates higher for longer and perhaps really dash those hopes for lower interest rates this year.
What about the Korean stock index performing so well? Is that justified? Is that based on quality, or is it directly linked to the short selling ban?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, really. So if you look at the short selling ban specifically, obviously it curtails what traders and investors can do. In simpler words, perhaps they can only bet one way, which is for the markets to go up. But from to use your word there, quality perspective, there are enough reasons on that front. So earlier you mentioned stocks like Samsung and SK, right? So these are semiconductor stocks, and we know that the AI demand has been resilient. And so that's feeding into demand for these kind of semiconductor stocks. But also, I think overall, there has been foreign inflows on the back of hopes that the global economy might not fare as bad as expected in light of what we spoke on earlier, that is the Fed potentially lowering interest rates to help support the US economy.
Okay, my guest is Han Tan, who's the Chief Market Analyst for Xfinity Group. Appreciate the analysis. Okay, let's round up other top stories, business related from around the world, starting with Bitcoin, which has started the new year with a bang, surging more than 6% on day one of the year to $45,000 currently, the highest it's been since April 2022, when the collapse of Terra Luna stablecoin triggered a global sell-off in digital assets. Crypto assets have been rallying since the second half of last year, buoyed by optimism around possible approval of exchange-traded spot Bitcoin funds. Elsewhere, Singapore's economy has grown more than expected in the fourth quarter, thanks to improvements in construction and manufacturing. GDP expanded by 2.8% from a year ago, following the 1% growth recorded in the third quarter. But economic growth slowed to 1.2% for the whole year, amid a global slowdown stemming from high interest rates. And Ethiopia has signed a memorandum of understanding with Somalia's breakaway region, Somaliland, to use one of its ports. That agreement will give the landlocked African country access to the Red Sea, that in exchange for a stake in its flagship carrier, Ethiopian Airlines. Ethiopia currently relies on neighbouring Djibouti for most of its maritime trade.